In the fading red wash of a dying western sun, a lonely cowboy named Eli Marrow rode across the cracked earth of Red Valley, coughing hard enough to rattle his ribs, his breath thin as thread and his visions swimming like mirages on hot sand. For he knew his time was slipping through his fingers like dust. The doctor in Laramie had told him he scarcely had a week left unless he took the last dose of a rare medicine tucked deep inside his saddlebag, a medicine made from desert root and iron flour, sap that kept his failing lungs from collapsing entirely. Yet Eli carried it not for saving himself, but simply because it was the only thing keeping him in the saddle long enough to reach home, though home was nothing more than a crooked cabin on the edge of nowhere, haunted by memories he wished he could forget. As he pushed his horse, a stubborn but loyal mare named Cinder, down a narrow trail between crimson cliffs, he heard a strange cry, soft at first, then rising into a pained moan that echoed off the rock walls. And though Eli was half delirious with fever, something in him refused to ignore suffering. He nudged Cinder toward the sound and soon found a young native warrior sprawled beside a broken cedar stump, clutching his leg where an arrow had pierced deep into the muscle, blood painting the earth in dark patches, his breath sharp and ragged. And Eli, knowing the tension between settlers and local tribes had reached a dangerous peak in recent months, nonetheless climbed off his horse with shaking legs and knelt beside the stranger, who glared at him with eyes full of fire but also fear. Eli whispered, "Easy, son. I ain't here to finish what someone else started." And though the warrior couldn't understand his words fully, he sensed no danger from this dying cowboy. Eli tore a strip from his own shirt, snapped the arrow the way a field medic once showed him during the war, and with trembling hands pulled out the shaft, causing the warrior to bite down hard on a stone to keep from screaming too loud. The bleeding wouldn't stop. Eli knew it, and his lungs burned painfully as he remembered the medicine vial in his saddlebag, the one keeping him alive, the one buying him time. And for a long moment he simply stared at the warrior, at the youth of his face, at the desperation in his eyes, then at the sun slipping below the cliffs like a fading heartbeat. And he realized the truth. This young man had a future. Friends, a tribe, maybe a family waiting. Eli had none of those left, and so, without hesitation, he retrieved the medicine, uncorked the vial, poured half on the wound, and placed the rest between the warrior's lips, murmuring, "Live, kid. Don't let my last ride be wasted." And as the warrior drifted into unconsciousness, Eli felt his own strength collapsing like an old barn struck by wind. For hours he sat there leaning against Cinder, shivering uncontrollably as the night cold crept in, whispering prayers to the desert wind, though he hadn't prayed in years. At dawn, shadows moved atop the cliffs, silent figures watching him, and before he could rise, a group of native riders descended quietly, their faces painted for scouting missions, their spears raised cautiously, for they found one of their own lying wounded beside a pale-faced cowboy who looked half dead already. Eli didn't resist when they took his weapon, didn't even speak, only pointed weakly toward the medicine vial lying empty beside the warrior. Recognition flickered in their eyes as they understood what had happened, for the medicine's scent was unmistakably of the desert roots sacred to their healers, rare enough that its presence could only mean the cowboy had given away his only hope of survival. The riders lifted their wounded brother gently and stared down at Eli, whose breath now rattled like broken glass. And one of them, an elder with silver braids, touched Eli's shoulder in gratitude, saying softly in his own tongue words of respect, though Eli barely heard them through the ringing in his ears. They placed him on Cinder, tied him securely so he wouldn't fall, and guided the mare toward the rising sun, deeper into their lands, where no outsider had set foot willingly in decades. Eli drifted in and out of consciousness as images blurred, firelit faces, chanting voices, the smell of herbs and smoke, as the tribe carried him to their hidden valley, a place whispered about in frontier towns, yet never spoken of clearly, a place where the tribe kept rituals older than memory, And though Eli believed they were rescuing him, he would soon learn they were preparing something far more mysterious. Something no settler had ever seen and lived to talk about. Something the tribe only performed for those who offered a life to save another. As his vision dimmed completely, the last thing he heard was the voice of the silver-braided elder saying, "He gave life, so we give what cannot be named." And then the world dissolved into darkness, as if he had fallen into the center of the earth itself. They carried Eli Marrow into the heart of their hidden valley, a place where the cliffs curved inward like a great stone cradle, and the air hummed with drums so ancient the sound seemed older than the wind itself. And though Eli drifted in and out of fever, he felt hands, gentle, strong, lifting him, washing him with cool water from mountain springs, placing herbs beneath his tongue that tasted bitter as ash yet, strangely warm as firelight. When he finally opened his eyes fully, he found himself in a circular lodge, lit only by the glow of embers, its ceiling painted with swirling symbols of animals, storms, and spirits. And seated around him were elders of the tribe, their faces solemn, their eyes fixed on him as though studying a rare creature. He tried to speak, but his chest seized violently, the cough tearing through him like a blade. And the silver-braided elder raised a hand for silence, whispering, "Do not fear, Cowboy. You gave your breath to save one of ours. Now we decide if the spirits will return breath to you." Eli didn't understand, not fully, but he felt the gravity of their voices, the weight of their decision. The young warrior he saved, now bandaged, recovering, stepped forward and placed his hand on Eli's shoulder, bowing once in deep respect. And something in that gesture made Eli's eyes sting with emotion, for nobody had looked at him like that in years. Then the ceremony began, drums slow and steady, shadows dancing like living things on the walls, herbs burning atop glowing stones until the air thickened with smoke that smelled of pine, earth, and thunder. The elder drew a circle of ash around Eli's body, murmuring words Eli could barely hear, words that felt like they were calling something from beyond the valley. The tribe believed that those who gave life freely were marked by the Great Spirit, and in return, the tribe could perform a ritual known to only a handful of families, the breath exchange, a rite no outsider had ever witnessed and survived to tell. As the drums quickened, the elder pressed his palms over Eli's chest, chanting loudly now, calling for the sickness to leave him, calling for the dying breath to be replaced with the strength of the earth itself. The smoke thickened until Eli couldn't see the walls anymore, only glowing shapes swirling like spirits around him. And suddenly he felt something deep in his lungs, heat, fierce and bright, spreading like wildfire through his dying body. He gasped, coughing up dark clots of blood and sickness that splattered onto the earth. And the elders nodded, as if this was exactly what they expected. For minutes, maybe hours, the ritual continued until Eli's vision steadied. His breathing deepened, and the fiery pain in his ribs faded to a warm hum. When the smoke cleared, the valley air felt sharper, cleaner, and Eli realized with shock that he could breathe, truly breathe, for the first time in months. The young warrior knelt beside him, gripping his hand and whispering a promise. "Your life belongs to our story now." And though Eli wanted to understand what that meant, the elder simply said, "Leave this valley strong, Cowboy. Tell no one what we have done. Some gifts are not meant for the world to analyze." When they finally led him out at dawn, the sky painted in gold and pink, Eli felt like a man reborn. His sickness vanished as though stolen away by unseen hands. He mounted Cinder, who whinnied softly, sensing his restored strength. And as he rode away from the hidden valley, he turned for one last look, but the cliffs were silent, the entrance gone, as if the entire place had melted back into legend. Eli Marrow lived many more years, healthier than any doctor could explain, but he never spoke a word about what the tribe had done. He only told one truth whenever someone asked him how he survived death. "Because once, long ago, I gave my last breath to save a stranger, and the world gave one back."